There are some really cool moves in Pokemon that, despite their unique characteristics, just aren't quite good enough for competitive. They fit in this almost good category where the conditions for them being viable are too specific. We're gonna go over the biggest offenders of this trope, and I'll suggest some minor fixes to most of them that could help them see competitive use. I'm not talking about low base power moves designed to be used early game, so those will be excluded. The first move is Belch. This is a move that has a cool concept, but isn't practical due to essentially being locked behind a paywall before usage. It has a great 120 base power, making it the strongest special poison attack. 90% accuracy isn't too bad either, but to use this move, the user has to have consumed a berry during the battle. It pretty much means your held item needs to be a berry, and you have to follow a very specific game plan to get this move going. Even one of the easier berries to consume, like the citrus berry, will require you to take a good amount of damage before use, or use substitute to get yourself in range. On offensive mons that would want to use this move, sacrificing a boosting item is too much to ask, as you could gain more damage from running Life Orb or Specs with Sledge Bomb and not worry about being able to actually use your moves. My idea for this move would to make it usable at all times, but just have the power start at 60 and double to 120 when a berry is consumed. It's not very good until munching on a berry, but it isn't just a dead move slot, and you can strategically time its use if you know you're going to be consuming your berry that turn and get the doubled power. I mentioned that most of these have really cool effects that look attractive, and that's where we see the move Electro Ball. Electro Ball is an attack that becomes more powerful the faster you are in comparison to the target. It seems pretty juicy since electric types typically have high speed stats, so running a 120 or 150 base power attack is a no-brainer, right? But when looking at how the actual formula works, it gets really hard to consistently get a damage output that outperforms Thunderbolt. Even on a Pokemon like Regieleki, you know, the mon with the highest base speed in the game, when facing off against other offensive mons, they're going to be running a lot of speed as well. And the way base stats and EVs actually scale means your 200 base speed Regieleki won't be twice as fast as a 100 base speed mon. In fact, a fully invested mon at just 34 base speed can limit a fully invested Regieleki to an 80 power Electro Ball, whereas a mon with no investment in neutral nature only needs to have a base speed of 74 to limit it to 80. So you are really banking on only hitting really slow defensive mons for better damage than Thunderbolt at the cost of hitting a decent chunk worse against a vast majority of mons you're going to face. It could be used in conjunction with Choice Scarf or lowering your opponent's speed stat to get the better damage ranges, but consistency is paramount when coming to competitive battles. An easy buff to this is make the power range threshold smaller, or it can adopt a dynamic system like Gyro Ball, where the base power changes directly in relation to the speed disparity, meaning you don't just have to reach certain ranges to get a power boost. Almost Good perfectly describes some of the creatures generated in Gug, a new game on Steam dropping August 12th. Gug is a sandbox turn-based game where your creativity comes first. After playing the demo, I have to say it challenged me in a way no other game has. There's no preset builds, it's all you and your ability to form a team of Gugs that can synergize and beat the opponents down. This system takes your word choices and creates a Gug that suits it. You can type in something random and see what you get, or you can go for specific roles. Elemental based Gugs, healing support, but my personal favorite was the nuke button, which had a crazy effect of exploding on entry and instantly killing all other creatures on the battlefield. It made for very strategic gameplay since I didn't want to destroy my allies, so I would wait for the opponent to send in their threats before swapping it in and absolutely annihilating everything. This is an extremely challenging game after the first couple levels. Some of my Gugs definitely fell flat. One named the Immortal, to no one's surprise, was underwhelming and ended up getting killed multiple times in one match thanks to its special ability. Finding the best setups makes this a very replayable game, as you have to adapt every run to the chaos of different enemy types, modifiers, Gug abilities, and more. Check out the pinned comment or link in the description of this video to check out Gug and add it to your Steam wishlist. Trump Card is a deck suited move that I'm sure a lot of you have never even seen used. It is a special normal type attack that starts off with a very low base power, but builds in power the less PP the move has. Again, a really cool, unique concept, but not practical in competitive situations. The scaling is way too low, having 40 base power until it hits 3 PP left. It only marginally increases to 50 and then 60 base power before getting to decent damage with 80 on the second last use. The payoff is supposed to come with the last hit as you shoot off a 200 base power load of playing cards. This could be a solid niche move in a playthrough where you can deplete the PP in wild battles and save the last 1 or 2 for the gym leader, but when your PP is automatically maxed out, you don't have this luxury. And it's not too often you have 8 free turns to spam this move before it can actually put some damage up. My fix to this move would be to lower its PP to 5, start its base power a little higher, say 50, and have it scale with these base powers. It would keep the concept of having a weak move that progressively gets stronger, but has much more payoff as you use it. It's different enough from Echoed Voice as you don't have to use it consecutively for it to power up, and it has a little bit of niche over other special normal attacks as it's not blocked by soundproof. Next is Genesect's signature move Techno Blast. This is a 120 base power special attack sporting the normal type. Its gimmick is that it will change its type based on the drive Genesect is holding. At face value, this move looks pretty decent, except Genesect really has no reason to use it. Having to dedicate your item slot to run this move effectively is way too much to ask for. The big thing is that you also give away you're running this move and what type it's going to be upon team preview, as your Genesect will actually change color to reflect which drive it's holding. This gives away any surprise this move could actually have, which sucks because it could actually be pretty decent in draft formats. A small and simple change to make this move usable could be to just not change Genesect's appearance if it's holding a drive. You could also buff the drives themselves, which I think is a real problem here. Maybe include a stab bonus with the type of the drive, instead of just changing the type of one move. They really are just terrible items as they are. Steel Roller was a move I saw a lot of potential with when it was released. It's a 130 base power physical steel attack that removes terrain after use. When you see that it fails when no terrain is active, the excitement to use it pretty much goes away. It really only fits as very specific terrain counterplay, and I feel it has no real place in singles. My buddy Xbel covered this move and suggested changes if you want to check out his video. Essentially, the simple fix of this move is similar to the Belch idea. Allow this move to work at a lower power when no terrain is active, and when terrain is active, then it can shine with its great base power and terrain moving effect. Skull Bash is a charging attack that raises a user's defense stat by 1 stage on turn 1 and attacks on turn 2. It's not a terrible move on paper, with a great 130 base power and 100% accuracy, so why did this move never see usage? Well, charging moves historically haven't really been used, with exceptions being moves that can bypass the charging turns in weather, like Solar Beam, Solar Blade, and Electro Shot. The charging turn is just too much of a drawback, as non-NPCs can easily take the turn to prepare for the attack, or just take advantage of essentially a free turn. This move does really have solid potential, and I think all that really needs to be done to bring it from an F tier move to like a B or C tier move is to change it to the Rock type. Rock already has one of the only charging moves to see competitive use in Meteor Beam. There are tons of rock types that would happily run a Power Herb for a one-time nuke that actually has 100% accuracy. It at least gives it a decent roll since you don't have the mischance of Stone Edge and Head Smash, no recoil, and the defense boost on the charging turn is a nice addition to give it some benefit even after Power Herb is consumed. The rock typing gives it good super effective hits over the bland normal type. Combine this with Body Press and you have a pretty cool combo. The moves Stockpile, Spit Up, and Swallow are ones that work together. With the exception of Stockpile, these are very, very bad moves, even in a playthrough. The problem with Spit Up and Swallow is the amount of setup it requires just to get a one-time use out of them. You have to run Stockpile for these moves to even be usable, and then when you use them, they aren't even anything special. So why would you dedicate 2 to 3 move slots just to run these low value moves? Well, I don't think you can really fix these moves without a massive overhaul, but keeping true to the original concepts, here is what I feel could work. Stockpile can stay maxed out at 3, but once you build these moves up, they will stay at the level of stockpiles you have without resetting when used. So my proposed change will have Swallow heal 25% per use after 1 stockpile, 50% after 2, and cap out at 66% at 3 stockpiles. Spit Up, on the other hand, will be 100 base power, then 150, and finally, a 200 base power hit with 3 stockpiles. This really isn't broken, especially Spit Up hitting for normal type damage, but could be usable to give mons without reliable recovery a chance to set up and gain access to a suddenly great recovery option. They would have to spend a couple turns in move slots to make it worth it, which definitely balances it out, but once you get it going, it becomes a bit better than standard healing moves. Spit Up could be decent on a tank build who suddenly gets a pretty strong attack after setting up defense boosts. I could see Wigglytuff using it to gain a 200 base power hit on defensive sets. Punishment is a move with the sweet concept of countering stat boosting mons. It starts with 60 base power and adds 20 for every positive stat change the target has, capping at a max of 200 base power. So say the target just used Calm Mind, this move would now have 100 base power. Cool move, but ever since the knockoff buff in Generation 6, there hasn't been much reason to use this move. Physical dark type moves usually have some sort of utility behind them to fill a specific role. Pursuit as a trapping move, Foul Play to use your opponent's attack stat against them, Sucker Punch for priority, Crunch is strong and can drop defense, even Night Slash for crit fishing sets. Punishment fits here too, but out of all those options, and more to be honest, it's hard to convince yourself that it is the best option for your mon to use. Its power and usefulness is highly dependent on your opponent gaining stat boost. Otherwise, it's just a 60 base power attack with no additional utility. If they brought this move back, I think they should remove the 200 base power cap on the move. This move only boosts for up to 7 total stat increases. I'm not sure why it's even there when it isn't really something you set up yourself in the first place. If your opponent has max defense boost, then you're going to need all the power you can get. I could see this actually being somewhat useful, hitting a boosted Dondozo for at least 260 base power. Very situational, but it is something. Brine is an unfortunate move. It comes in at 65 base power and has the added effect of doubling in base power when the target is below half of their max HP. It's too strong to be considered a starter move and get a pass on this list, but it's also too weak to be considered competitively. This causes it to be a move overshadowed by the better options that exist for special attacking water types. The main problem with Brine is that its doubling effect that makes it worthwhile to use is too situational to make it a consistent option. 130 base power is great, but if your opponent is already at low HP, you will most likely be able to take them out with a move like Surf or Scald. These provide more consistent damage, and in Scald's case, a 30% chance to burn. When your opponent sees you have Brine as your water coverage, they will be a lot more confident in their ability to counter you, likely just by swapping in a mon at higher health. So how do we give this move a spot in competitive? An idea I had was to give this the Hex treatment and make it 65 base power, but double against a status target. This move shoots salt water, so it is essentially rubbing salt in the wound. It could be paired with Toxic Spikes and other status spreaders, while punishing Guts users, as well as really hitting Poison Heal Gliscor for great damage. It's really sad to see another signature move here, but I feel like Flying Press might be the definition of this video concept. Flying Press combines the strengths and weaknesses of the fighting and flying types. Such a unique move, having its own type chart. But it unfortunately has always been outclassed by stronger attacks like Close Combat and High Jump Kick. Flying Press on its own doesn't look too bad at 100 base power and 95% accuracy, but Hawlucha really needs all the power it can get with its only decent 92 base attack. Having a consistent fighting and flying attack separate to deal with the mon currently in front of it is just a lot more valuable than trying to compress these moves into one slot that ends up just being a lesser version of the moves it's trying to replace. Next to the dual typing of this move, I feel you miss out on a lot of super effective hits as well. Grass Poison types will get hit neutrally, And you miss out on a lot of super effective hits against rock and steel types that normally would be scared to stay in. I'm not sure exactly how to fix this move without getting rid of the dual type concept, maybe just a power buff, but Hawlucha doesn't really have 4 moveslot syndrome, so close combat and Brave Bird or acrobatics would be the go-to as well. Give me some of your ideas in the comments for this one, I'm curious to see what you'll come up with. Next I have the variable power attacks, Crush Grip, Ring Out, and Hard Press. These attacks all vary in power based on the target's current HP, with them being stronger the healthier the target. It's a nice concept, but these moves just do not work in a competitive setting. Their starting power is just not good enough to warrant use when considering the eventual drop off. This is especially true in the case of Hard Press, which I have no idea what they were thinking of with that move. It was really the only one that had potential to be viable, but with only 100 base power at max, no one is using this move. Crush Grip being a laughably bad signature move on a laughably bad legendary is one of the most unfortunate circumstances I've seen in all of Mons. Ring Out I feel is technically better as a special variation since it at least isn't affected by burn. I think we bumped these moves up to 150 base power when the target is at full HP to give them good early battle usage and sweeping potential. Hard Press will maybe cap out at 120 or 130 since it doesn't have any immunities and can hit super effectively. The other part that needs to be fixed is giving this move a power floor. These moves shouldn't be able to go under 40 base power, which can be when the target is at a quarter of their max HP or lower. It means they won't be absolutely useless when a weak target comes in, but they are also still heavily nerfed and fit the theme of these moves. Synchronoise is an embarrassment of a move due to its effect of only hitting against Pokemon who share a typing with the user. This is terrible, especially on the psychic type that resists itself, so if you want stab on it, you're going to likely be hitting for a resist. It even used to be only 70 base power before being buffed up to 120 base power. Once you reveal it, your opponent just has to switch to a Pokemon with a different type. So this move is pretty much unfixable without a major overhaul as it's fundamentally flawed. The best I could think of is making this a 75 to 80 base power attack that doubles in power if hitting a Pokemon that shares a typing with the user. I know, pretty original for this video concept. This makes it at least usable in game and could be an option competitively as some of the normal and flying type Pokemon could get off a really strong hit with it, along with essentially negating the resist psychic types would have swapping into this move. It's definitely hard to stand out as a normal type move as they have by far the most moves in the game. This is definitely the case for Retaliate, a 70 base power normal type attack with the added effect of doubling in base power if used a turn after one of your Pokemon were KO'd. It gets pretty strong for one turn and then it's just an underwhelming move with no utility to offer. I still really like this move's concept and animation, and I get why they initially made it only 70 power. As we can see comparable moves, it might just overshadow if it was 10 to 15 base power higher. With lack of super effective hits, normal type attacks need a good gimmick to make work. So I think adding some sort of Supreme Overlord effect to this move would be fitting and give it a good spot in competitive. You start out the same 70 base power move that doubles when an ally faints, but for every party member who has fainted, this move will gain additional base power. 1.1 times after one ally has fainted, 1.2 times after 2, up to 1.5 times base power when the rest of the party has fainted. This scales it just over return at max power with a possible one-time 210 base power hit. Natural Gift fits in the category of normal type move that isn't really a normal type move. This move's type and power vary based on the user's held berry. It can be used to give Pokemon with limited coverage options the ability to use a held berry and gain valuable coverage. It's honestly one of the coolest moves that were introduced, giving potential use to tons of otherwise competitively useless berries. The one thing I feel prevented this move from really ever seeing consistent competitive play is that once you use this move, your berry is consumed. This means you can only use this move once, unless you have some sort of harvest, recycle, or trick check to regain a berry, which I'm not even sure if those first two would work. It completely kills the vibe of this move that otherwise is a great physical hidden power alternative. If this move simply didn't consume the item after use, then it would be a good move, period. You don't even get the benefit of the berry during this. This is the only change they would have to make for it. It would not be close to broken, as berries generally aren't overpowered themselves, and if they do proc in the battle, then this move will cease to be usable anyways. I could definitely see berries like Custab, Lancet, Salac, Lychee, and the pinch berries get more use if they could be equipped to span decent power coverage and also be consumed when at low HP. This might even indirectly buff other moves like Bug Bite, Pluck, and Incinerate, which on a side note should definitely get the knockoff treatment of 1.5 times power when hitting a target with a berry. At the very least, you should be able to use this move to get your attack off and consume and get the beneficial traits of the berry you're holding. Storm Throw and Frost Breath are two moves I want to end the video on. Two 60 base power attacks that always result in a critical hit. These are counterparts that look good on paper, but fail to see competitive use due to simply being outclassed. Storm Throw's 60 base power is essentially just a 90 base power move with the added effect of ignoring defense boosts. Really solid in a playthrough to ignore those defense curls, but with so many great fighting attacks with either more power or greater utility, this move doesn't see the light of day. It doesn't help it has such shallow distribution. Pangoro would opt for close combat, or Iron Fist boosted Drain Punch. Pinsir and its Mega are always choosing the more powerful close combat for sweeping purposes, and Throw really shines with its Rest Talk Circle Throw set, although it is the closest to actually wanting to use this move. Frost Breath is in a similar boat, just being outclassed by the 100% accurate Ice Beam. These share the same power, with Frost Breath's only potential niche over it being counterplay against special defense boosts and screens. But not having that small freeze chance and having a less reliable 90% accuracy isn't worth that risk. This is especially true when you also factor in that a lot of ice types will run Freeze Dry to punish water types or Blizzard on snow teams. Almost every Pokemon that would consider Frost Breath has more reason to run these other more threatening and consistent options. So how would we make these mons consider these moves? Well, simply buffing their power up to 65 might just do it. Storm Throw would probably need to be 70 base power for it to be considered, bringing it up to 100 base power with the crit, but I think 65 power suffices for Frost Breath as it brings it up to 97.5 base power, which might just be strong enough to persuade some ice types to run it over Ice Beam, perhaps in combination with Freeze Dry. The accuracy should be bumped up to 95% as well, so it still has that slight uneasiness when clicking it, not just letting it outclass Ice Beam in most situations. Those are my almost good Pokemon moves. I definitely had a few more I didn't cover, but these were the ones that were most intriguing. Which moves do you think have a great concept, but just fall short when it comes to competitive play? Thanks to all my YouTube and Patreon members, including Goldbud Mr. Frank Beans and Bucket Boys Official. I also picked this video out for you I think you'll like. Check it out. I'll see you there, buds.